In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a bright morning sun cast warm rays on the streets. The chirping of birds filled the air as people went about their daily routines. Among them was a well-respected black judge named Robert Turner. Known for his strong sense of justice and dedication to his community, Judge Turner had worked tirelessly to build a reputation for fairness and understanding in the legal system. He believed in equality for everyone and often shared his experiences at community events, urging others to challenge prejudice and promote unity. On this particular day, Judge Turner was driving his sleek, new car down a familiar road. He had just left a meeting at the courthouse and was heading to a community outreach event. As he drove, he thought about the people he would meet and the conversations he would have, eager to connect with those who looked up to him. He glanced in his rearview mirror, noticing a police car behind him. At first, he thought nothing of it. It was a peaceful morning, and he was simply focused on his destination. However, a few moments later, the police car's lights flashed brightly, cutting through the morning calm. Confused, Judge Turner pulled over to the side of the road, wondering what might be the reason for the stop. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, and he felt a knot forming in his stomach. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm and collected. As the officer approached his car, Judge Turner rolled down the window, his mind racing with questions. The officer, a young white man with a stern expression, leaned down, looking at the judge with a mix of suspicion and authority. "Good morning, sir," the officer said, his tone serious. "I need to know where you got this car. It looks suspicious." Judge Turner felt a surge of frustration at the officer's words. "Excuse me?" he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is my car. I bought it legally." He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the assumptions being made because of the color of his skin. The officer, unfazed, continued with his questioning. "I'm going to need to see your identification and the vehicle registration. We've had reports of stolen cars in the area, and this one fits the description." The judge couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had spent years earning respect and trust in his community, only to be reduced to a suspect in this moment. He handed over his identification, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could this officer, who was supposed to protect and serve, treat him like a criminal? As the officer took a step back to check his credentials, Judge Turner glanced around. He noticed a couple of passers-by slowing down to watch the scene unfold. He could sense their curiosity and concern. The judge felt a heavy burden on his shoulders, not just for himself, but for all those who had faced similar situations due to systemic racism. It was a moment that transcended his personal experience. It was a reminder of the struggles many people endured every day. In that instant, Judge Turner realized he had an opportunity not just for himself, but to shed light on an important issue. He knew he needed to stand tall and represent not just his position as a judge, but as a voice for those who often felt voiceless in a society riddled with prejudice. As the police officer stepped back to check Judge Turner's identification, a wave of tension hung in the air. The judge's heart raced as he thought about the implications of this encounter. He could see the officer flipping through his credentials, looking for anything that would confirm the judge's identity. In that moment, Judge Turner felt a mixture of anger and sadness wash over him. It wasn't just about being stopped. It was about the deep-rooted biases that led to this situation in the first place. While waiting for the officer to return, Judge Turner couldn't help but reflect on his own journey. Growing up in a neighborhood that faced many challenges, he had always dreamt of making a difference in the world. His parents worked hard to provide for him and instilled in him the values of education, respect, and justice. They had taught him that hard work could lead to success, and he had dedicated his life to proving that right. Yet here he was, a respected judge, treated as if he were a criminal, simply because of the color of his skin and the car he drove. The officer returned, his face still serious. "Thank you for your patience, sir," he said, but the words felt empty to the judge. I just want to make sure everything checks out. The officer's tone suggested that he still held doubts, and it stung. Judge Turner took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. I understand your duty to keep the community safe, he said, his voice steady. But it's important to remember that not every situation is what it seems. The officer nodded, but seemed unmoved. I get that, but with all the recent thefts, we have to be careful. I just can't take chances. As the officer spoke, Judge Turner felt the frustration build inside him. It was as if the officer couldn't see the humanity in front of him. Only a man in a fancy car who, in his mind, might not belong there. As they continued to talk, other drivers slowed down, some even stopping to watch. Judge Turner could feel their eyes on him, and he wondered what they thought. Did they see a respected judge being treated unfairly? Or did they see a black man who didn't belong in that car? It was a moment that could define not just his day, but potentially how others perceived him in the community. Sir, can you please step out of the vehicle? The officer suddenly asked. Judge Turner's heart sank. Why do I need to step out? He replied, trying to keep his tone calm. I haven't done anything wrong. The officer insisted, though, and the judge reluctantly complied, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Stepping out of his car, Judge Turner felt exposed and vulnerable. He stood tall, determined to show dignity in the face of disrespect. He could feel the stares of onlookers, and he wanted to use this moment to make a statement. I want everyone here to understand, he said, his voice carrying strength, that this is not just about me. This is about a system that too often judges people by the color of their skin rather than their character. The officer looked taken aback, but Judge Turner continued. I've worked hard to earn my position, and I'm here to serve my community. This encounter should remind us all that we must do better, whether it's as individuals, as law enforcement, or as a society. In that moment, Judge Turner felt a mix of fear and determination. He knew he might not change the officer's mind in an instant, but he hoped that his words would resonate with the onlookers. Perhaps this moment could spark a discussion about race and bias that went beyond just one interaction. It was a chance to stand up not only for himself, but for everyone who faced similar challenges. As Judge Turner stood beside his car, the tension between him and the officer filled the air. The judge felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him: anger, confusion, and a strong desire to be understood. The officer, still holding the judge's identification, seemed unsure how to respond to the judge's calm yet firm words. For a brief moment, silence enveloped them, and Judge Turner took a deep breath, trying to collect his thoughts. He knew this was not just a moment for himself. It was a moment that could impact the community. People were watching, and he wanted to convey a message that went beyond this encounter. Listen, Judge Turner began, looking directly at the officer. I understand that your job is to protect and serve. I truly respect that. But we have to have conversations about why these situations happen in the first place. His voice was steady, and he hoped to connect with the officer as a fellow human being rather than an adversary. The officer glanced at the onlookers, who were now fully engaged in the unfolding scene. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clearly uncertain about how to proceed. I just had to be sure, sir. You understand, right? He replied, trying to justify his actions. I do understand the need for caution. Judge Turner responded, maintaining his composure. But when people see a black man in a nice car, the assumption shouldn't automatically be that he's up to no good. This kind of profiling is what leads to distrust between law enforcement and communities, especially communities of color. We need to break this cycle. The officer nodded slowly, perhaps beginning to grasp the deeper meaning behind the judge's words. I never thought about it that way, he admitted, his tone softening slightly. It was a small step, but Judge Turner could sense a change in the officer's demeanor. Good, Judge Turner said, encouraged by the officer's response. We all have biases, whether we realize it or not. It's important for us to acknowledge them, and work together to create a more just society. He could feel the eyes of the onlookers on him, some nodding in agreement, others still looking skeptical. But in that moment, he felt a sense of purpose. "Let me ask you something," the officer said, hesitating for a moment as he considered his words. "What do you think we should do to change things?" Judge Turner smiled, appreciating the officer's willingness to engage. "It starts with education and open conversations. Officers need training not just on the laws, but also on cultural competency. Understanding the communities they serve can help break down barriers and build trust." The officer took a step closer, leaning in as if he wanted to hear more. "What else?" he asked, genuinely curious. Judge Turner thought for a moment, then continued, "Community outreach is key. Officers should be visible in neighborhoods, not just in times of crisis. When people see officers as allies rather than threats, it can change everything. And as leaders, we need to set the tone for our communities." The conversation was slowly shifting, and Judge Turner felt hopeful. It's about creating relationships. When people feel safe to speak up and trust law enforcement, it benefits everyone. At that moment, the officer's radio crackled, interrupting their exchange. He glanced down at his equipment, a mix of duty and regret crossing his face. "I need to respond to that," he said reluctantly, "but I appreciate what you've said." Judge Turner nodded, understanding the demands of the job. "Thank you for listening. I hope this encounter can be a starting point for change." As the officer walked away to tend to his radio call, Judge Turner stood by his car, feeling a sense of relief. He had spoken his truth, and perhaps he had planted a seed of change. The onlookers, too, began to disperse, some exchanging glances of understanding, as if they had witnessed something important. Judge Turner knew that while this was just one moment in time, it had the potential to spark discussions that could lead to greater awareness and change in the community. As the officer walked away to respond to his radio call, Judge Turner stood by his car, feeling a mix of relief and concern. The encounter had opened a door for conversation, but it had also exposed the uncomfortable reality of racial profiling. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was not just about him. It was about the countless individuals who had faced similar situations. In that moment, he realized how important it was to continue the dialogue about race and justice. While he waited for the officer to return, Judge Turner took a deep breath and looked around. The onlookers who had gathered to watch were now mingling, some whispering to each other. He noticed a young woman standing off to the side, her arms crossed, clearly upset. Their eyes met, and she gave him a small nod of encouragement. It was a reminder that his words mattered, and he felt empowered to speak up. After a few minutes, the officer returned, looking a bit flustered from the radio call. "Sorry about that, sir. Just had to check in," he said, trying to regain his composure. "I appreciate your patience." Judge Turner could sense that the officer was still grappling with the implications of their conversation. "I understand," Judge Turner replied. "I know you have a job to do, but I also think it's important for us to recognize how these encounters affect our communities." The officer nodded, his expression softening again. "You're right. I never meant to offend you, and I see now that I could have handled things differently." Judge Turner felt a wave of relief wash over him. It's not about offense. It's about awareness. When officers take the time to understand the people they serve, it builds trust and respect. That's essential for a healthy community. The officer took a moment to reflect. "You know, I think a lot of us don't realize how our actions can impact others. We get caught up in the rules and regulations, and sometimes we forget the people behind the badge and the people we serve." "Yes," Judge Turner replied, his voice steady. "It's essential to remember that everyone has a story. I've worked hard to be a judge and serve my community, but that doesn't shield me from the biases that exist. It's a constant battle." As they spoke, Judge Turner felt a connection forming between them. The officer was starting to see beyond the uniform and badge. "I want to do better," he said, determination in his voice. I want to be part of the solution. How can I help? The judge smiled, appreciating the officer's willingness to engage. It starts with conversations like this. Sharing experiences and listening to each other is vital. You could encourage your department to hold community forums, spaces where people can voice their concerns and suggestions. The officer nodded enthusiastically. That's a great idea. We could invite community leaders and residents to come together and discuss these issues. I'd love to help organize something like that. Their dialogue began to flow more freely, and Judge Turner felt hopeful. It's also about education. Maybe we can create workshops that focus on racial bias and community relations. The more we learn about each other, the more we can understand and support one another. The officer looked inspired. I think that could really make a difference. I've seen how divided things can get between police and communities, especially in neighborhoods like this one. It doesn't have to be that way. Judge Turner agreed, feeling a surge of hope. Absolutely. It's all about building bridges. The goal is to create an environment where everyone feels safe and valued. When people trust law enforcement, it helps everyone. As they continued to talk, the initial tension began to fade away, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. The officer's willingness to listen and learn was encouraging, and Judge Turner felt that maybe, just maybe, they were on the path to something meaningful. In that moment, Judge Turner knew that this encounter would not just be a story of a judge stopped by a police officer. It was the beginning of a conversation that could lead to real change. It was about the hope that they could inspire others to challenge their assumptions and work together for a better future, one where everyone felt seen, heard, and respected. As the conversation continued between Judge Turner and the officer, the atmosphere shifted. The initial tension had transformed into a moment of mutual understanding. Judge Turner felt a sense of hope, realizing that this encounter might lead to something bigger than just one stopped car. It was about forging connections and inspiring change within their community. After discussing various ideas for community engagement, the officer, whose name was Officer Collins, looked at the judge with sincerity. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, he said. Not everyone would do that in this situation. It takes a lot of courage to speak up, especially when you feel wronged. Judge Turner smiled, feeling the weight of those words. Thank you, Officer Collins. It's important for all of us to have these conversations. I know that many people might feel frustrated or scared in similar situations, but we can choose to turn those feelings into something positive. As they wrapped up their discussion, Officer Collins began to reflect on the larger implications of their encounter. I've seen a lot of negative stories in the news lately about police interactions with the community, and it's disheartening, he admitted. I want to be part of the change that helps to rebuild trust. Judge Turner nodded in agreement. It's crucial for police officers to recognize their role as community members first. You are not just enforcers of the law. You are part of the fabric of the community you serve. When people see you as allies rather than adversaries, it can change everything. Absolutely, Officer Collins said, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. I want to make a difference, and I think starting conversations like this is a step in the right direction. I can't promise that I'll change everyone's mind overnight, but I can certainly try. Judge Turner felt encouraged by the officer's eagerness to learn and grow. Every little step counts. It's about consistency and commitment. When community members see genuine efforts from law enforcement, it can lead to lasting change. As they stood there, discussing ideas, the atmosphere around them began to shift. The onlookers, who had initially gathered out of curiosity, now listened intently. Some of them even nodded in agreement, clearly moved by the conversation they were witnessing. Judge Turner realized that their discussion had turned into an impromptu community forum, and he felt a surge of responsibility. Maybe we should invite these folks into the conversation, Judge Turner suggested, glancing at the onlookers. After all, they are part of the community too. Their voices matter. Officer Collins agreed. Great idea. If anyone has thoughts or experiences they want to share, this could be a good opportunity for dialogue. Encouraged, Judge Turner turned to the small group that had gathered. Thank you all for your patience. We've been talking about the importance of understanding and building trust between law enforcement and our community. If anyone would like to share their thoughts or experiences, this is a safe space. At first, there was a moment of hesitation. People exchanged glances, unsure if they should speak up. But then, a middle-aged man stepped forward. I think it's important for us to recognize that not every officer is the same, he began. There are good officers out there, like Officer Collins here, who want to help. But there are also people who have faced unfair treatment. It's a complex issue. Judge Turner nodded, appreciating the man's honesty. You're right. It's about finding common ground and working together. We all have a role to play in creating a safer, more inclusive environment. Another person in the crowd chimed in. I've had my own experiences with police that left me feeling powerless. It's refreshing to see an officer here willing to listen. Officer Collins listened intently, taking in the feedback and experiences shared by the community members. He knew that these conversations were essential for growth and understanding. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. It's important for me to hear what you've experienced. I want to be part of the change, and this is where it starts. As the dialogue continued, Judge Turner felt a sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a routine traffic stop had evolved into a powerful moment of connection and conversation. He realized that by standing up for himself, he had created a platform for others to speak out as well. In that moment, he knew they were planting the seeds for a better future, one where understanding, compassion, and collaboration could thrive. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, symbolizing hope and new beginnings. As the discussion unfolded, the mood among the crowd began to shift from uncertainty to engagement. Judge Turner stood among the people, feeling a surge of optimism as voices rose in a chorus of shared experiences. Officer Collins remained attentive, taking notes and nodding along as community members shared their thoughts. A young woman, perhaps in her 20s, stepped forward. I grew up in this neighborhood, and I've seen so much change over the years. But I still feel like there's a wall between us and the police. Sometimes it feels like we're not safe, even with you around, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I want to believe in the police, but it's hard when we only hear negative stories. Judge Turner listened closely, feeling the weight of her words. I appreciate your honesty. It's important for us to acknowledge those feelings. Trust takes time, and it's built through consistent actions and understanding. He looked at Officer Collins. What do you think about what she said? Officer Collins nodded. I completely understand. Trust isn't something that can be demanded. It has to be earned. I want to work with you all to create an environment where you feel safe and respected. The young woman smiled slightly, encouraged by the officer's response. I think that's a good start. Maybe we can have more community events where we can meet officers in a relaxed environment. It would help us see that you're not just here for emergencies. That's a great idea, Judge Turner exclaimed. Building relationships outside of high-stress situations is essential. If officers could participate in community events, it would show that you are invested in our well-being. Another person from the crowd chimed in, an elderly man with a warm smile. I've seen a lot in my years, and I know that change doesn't happen overnight. But having conversations like this is a step in the right direction. Let's keep talking, not just today, but regularly. Judge Turner felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you for that. Regular dialogue is essential. I believe we should create a community committee where residents and officers can meet regularly to discuss issues and ideas. It would give everyone a voice. The crowd murmured in agreement, some people nodding enthusiastically. Officer Collins looked excited. I'd love to be part of that committee. It would give me a chance to learn more about your concerns and how we can address them together. As they continued to share thoughts, Judge Turner felt a growing sense of unity among the people. He noticed how everyone was becoming more comfortable expressing their ideas. This was more than just a conversation. It was a movement towards understanding and healing. A young boy, who had been standing with his mother, raised his hand hesitantly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Can I say something?" he asked, his voice small but brave. "Of course." Judge Turner encouraged, kneeling down to the boy's level. "What's on your mind?" The boy took a deep breath. "I just want to know why some people are scared of the police. My mom tells me to be careful, but I don't really understand why." The crowd fell silent, the simplicity of his question hanging in the air. Judge Turner felt a lump in his throat. "That's a very important question," he said softly. "Sometimes, people feel scared because they have had bad experiences or heard stories that made them worried. But it's important to know that not all police officers are the same, just like not all people are the same. It's about understanding each other and building trust." Officer Collins added, "You're right. It's our job to show you that we're here to help, not to hurt. And I promise we will work hard to make sure you and everyone else feel safe around us." The boy smiled, satisfied with their answers. The moment felt powerful, a reminder of the innocence of youth and the importance of fostering understanding for the next generation. As the sun continued to set, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Judge Turner looked around at the people gathered. He felt a sense of accomplishment and hope for what they were creating together. They were not just talking. They were forming connections that could change the narrative for their community. "Let's keep this momentum going," Judge Turner said, addressing everyone. "Let's work together to create a future where trust is built on understanding, respect, and open dialogue." The crowd erupted in applause, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. It was a pivotal moment that would mark the beginning of a new chapter for their community, one that embraced conversation and collaboration as tools for progress. As the applause faded, Judge Turner felt the energy of the crowd. There was a spark in the air, a sense of purpose that filled the space. He could see that everyone was eager to continue this newfound conversation. People were leaning in, some with hopeful expressions and others looking thoughtful, contemplating what had just taken place. Officer Collins stepped forward, his face lighting up with excitement. "I want to make sure we don't lose this moment. Let's set a date for our first community meeting. I can work with my department to get some officers involved, and we can invite community leaders to join us too." The crowd responded with enthusiasm, murmurs of agreement rippling through the group. "Yes, that sounds great," a voice called out. "We need to keep the conversation going." Judge Turner smiled, feeling a deep sense of camaraderie. "Let's make sure we advertise the meeting well. Flyers, social media, whatever it takes to get the word out. We want everyone's voice to be heard." An older woman in the crowd raised her hand, her face serious yet warm. "I've lived here for over 40 years, and I've seen the good and the bad. I remember when we had block parties where everyone knew each other, including the officers. Those days felt safer. We need to bring that spirit back." Her words resonated with many, and the crowd nodded in agreement. "Yes, let's have block parties again." Someone else shouted, the excitement building. Judge Turner turned to Officer Collins. "That could be a wonderful idea. Community events not only allow us to meet one another, but also help build trust. Let's plan for fun activities where families can come out, enjoy good food, and get to know the officers in a relaxed setting." "I love that," Officer Collins replied, his enthusiasm infectious. "We can set up games for the kids and have discussions for the adults. It could be a fun way to build relationships." The atmosphere was electric with ideas. A man stepped forward, looking eager to contribute. "What if we also included some workshops? We could have sessions about safety, understanding rights, and how to report issues. It would empower everyone and help build a stronger community." "Absolutely," Judge Turner exclaimed. "Education is key. When people know their rights and how to engage with law enforcement. It builds confidence. It's about knowledge and connection. As they continued brainstorming, Judge Turner felt inspired by the energy of the crowd. Each suggestion brought them closer together, and he could sense that they were all committed to making their community a better place. A young woman, who had previously spoken about feeling disconnected from the police, raised her hand again. "I think we should have a community garden. It can be a place for us to work together and grow something beautiful. It would symbolize our unity and care for each other." "That's a brilliant idea," Officer Collins replied. "Gardening could bring families together and give kids something to be proud of. We can even have officers volunteer to help with the garden, showing that we are all in this together." The crowd buzzed with excitement at the thought of a community garden. People began discussing what types of plants they could grow, and laughter filled the air. It felt like a shared vision was emerging, one that included everyone. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow on the neighborhood, Judge Turner took a moment to look around. He saw faces filled with hope, determination, and connection. This was more than just a conversation. It was a turning point. "Let's remember that this is just the beginning," he said, addressing the group once more. "We have a unique opportunity to change the narrative in our community. Together, we can build bridges, foster understanding, and create a safe, inclusive environment for everyone." The crowd erupted in applause once again, their excitement palpable. It felt like they were on the brink of something significant. The barriers that had once separated them were slowly breaking down, and hope was flourishing in its place. As the gathering began to disperse, Judge Turner and Officer Collins exchanged a knowing look, both recognizing the power of what had just transpired. They had ignited a spark that could grow into a flame, one that would illuminate the path to a brighter future for their community. The conversations would continue, and the work would be ongoing, but they were ready to take on the challenge together. In the days that followed the community gathering, a palpable sense of excitement hung in the air. Judge Turner and Officer Collins quickly became the driving forces behind the upcoming events. They met regularly, brainstorming ideas and working to make the community's vision a reality. The enthusiasm from the crowd had inspired them both, and they were determined to carry that momentum forward. One sunny afternoon, Judge Turner sat in his office, going over notes from the previous meeting. He had received countless messages from community members eager to help. People were reaching out with ideas, suggestions, and offers to volunteer. It was heartwarming to see how everyone wanted to be involved. "Maybe we should organize a planning meeting," he thought to himself. "If we bring everyone together, we can discuss all the ideas and assign tasks." He quickly drafted an email inviting community members to a planning session, emphasizing the importance of collaboration. Meanwhile, Officer Collins was busy at the local police station, sharing the excitement with his fellow officers. He organized a meeting to talk about their upcoming community events. "We need to show our commitment to building trust," he told them passionately. "We have an opportunity to make a real difference, and I want everyone to be on board." Some officers were initially hesitant, unsure of how to engage with the community. "What if they don't want us there?" one officer asked. Officer Collins countered, "That's exactly why we need to be there. We need to show them we care and that we are listening. Change starts with us." As he spoke, he could see their doubts begin to fade. The more they talked about the events, block parties, workshops, and the community garden, the more excited everyone became. It was clear that they were ready to step up and be a part of something meaningful. When the planning meeting finally took place, Judge Turner arrived to find a diverse group gathered in the local community center. There were young families, senior citizens, teenagers, and even a few local business owners. The room buzzed with energy as people greeted each other and exchanged ideas. "Thank you all for coming," Judge Turner began, smiling at the crowd. "What we're building here is more than just events. It's about creating a lasting connection between the police and our community. Everyone's voice matters, and together, we can make a real impact." As he spoke, Officer Collins stood beside him, nodding in agreement. We're here to listen, learn, and collaborate. Your thoughts and ideas will help us shape these events. This is about us all working together to build trust. The discussions flowed freely. Someone suggested having a barbecue as part of the block party, while another proposed inviting local musicians to perform. Ideas about safety workshops, community gardening sessions, and even book clubs emerged. The atmosphere was vibrant and inclusive, with everyone eager to contribute. A teenager named Maya stood up, her eyes shining with excitement. What if we have a talent show during the block party? It could give kids a chance to show their skills and help everyone get to know each other. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Yes, that's a great idea, many shouted. Judge Turner and Officer Collins exchanged glances, both impressed by the enthusiasm. As the meeting continued, they formed smaller groups to tackle different aspects of the events. Some people focused on organizing the block party, while others worked on safety workshops. Officer Collins took charge of connecting with his fellow officers to ensure they could participate meaningfully. By the end of the meeting, everyone felt a sense of accomplishment. They had not only shared ideas, but had also begun to forge connections with one another. It was a step toward the unity they all desired. As people began to leave, Judge Turner felt a deep sense of gratitude. The energy in the room had been electric, and he knew that they were creating something special together. This is just the beginning, he thought to himself. We are building a community that values trust, understanding, and cooperation. With plans in motion, Judge Turner and Officer Collins felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were ready to roll up their sleeves and dive into the work ahead. The hope and excitement they had seen in the crowd were contagious, and they knew that they were on the path to something truly transformative. Together, they would continue to work toward a future where everyone felt valued, heard, and safe in their community. The day of the first community block party arrived, and a palpable excitement filled the air. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. Judge Turner and Officer Collins arrived early to oversee the preparations. They were greeted by a bustling scene, with volunteers setting up tables, stringing colorful banners, and arranging chairs. Laughter and chatter echoed through the streets, creating a festive atmosphere. "Look at all the energy," Judge Turner exclaimed, beaming at the sight of families and friends coming together. "This is amazing." Officer Collins nodded, taking in the scene with pride. "I can already feel a sense of community. People are excited to connect, and it's just what we need." As the party kicked off, music filled the air. Local bands and musicians set up their instruments, and the first notes began to play, inviting people to dance and enjoy the festivities. Children ran around with balloons, their laughter ringing out as they played games organized by volunteers. It was a joyful sight, and both Judge Turner and Officer Collins felt a sense of fulfillment watching everyone come together. "Let's make sure to mingle," Officer Collins suggested. "It's important for the officers to connect with the community." Judge Turner agreed, and they both began walking around, greeting people and introducing themselves. They were met with smiles, handshakes, and even some hugs. The conversations flowed easily, and the barriers that once existed began to dissolve. "Thank you for coming out today," a mother said, her little girl tugging at her hand. "It means a lot to see officers here, enjoying the day with us." Officer Collins smiled, feeling the warmth in her words. "We're here to listen and connect. Your thoughts and concerns are important to us." Meanwhile, Judge Turner spoke with a group of teens who were excitedly discussing the upcoming talent show. "We can't wait to show off our skills," one of the boys said. "It's going to be so much fun." "I'm looking forward to seeing what you all bring to the stage," Judge Turner replied, encouraging their enthusiasm. "Events like this help us all learn about each other." As the afternoon progressed, it was time for the workshops to begin. Officer Collins took the lead, gathering a group of attendees who wanted to learn more about safety and understanding their rights. He shared valuable information, and the participants asked questions, eager to engage in meaningful dialogue. The connection between law enforcement and the community grew stronger as they talked openly and honestly. Judge Turner, on the other hand, hosted a workshop focused on conflict resolution and communication. He spoke about the importance of listening and understanding one another. These skills are vital for building trust, he said. When we can communicate effectively, we can solve problems together. The attendees participated actively, sharing their thoughts and experiences. It was clear that these conversations were not only informative, but also cathartic, allowing people to express their feelings and learn from one another. As the sun began to set, the block party reached its peak. The talent show kicked off, with local kids showcasing their talents, singing, dancing, and even performing magic tricks. The crowd cheered and clapped, creating a supportive atmosphere that encouraged everyone to shine. Judge Turner and Officer Collins watched from the sidelines, their hearts swelling with pride. This was what they had envisioned: a community coming together, breaking down barriers, and celebrating their differences. As the evening came to a close, the community gathered for a final group photo. Smiling faces filled the frame, reflecting the joy and unity they had created that day. Judge Turner stood next to Officer Collins, both beaming with happiness. "This is just the beginning," Judge Turner said, looking at the crowd. "We have built something special today, and we need to keep it going." "Absolutely," Officer Collins agreed. "Let's continue these conversations and make our community stronger together." With hearts full of hope and a shared vision for the future, they knew that they were on a path to lasting change. The block party was not just an event. It was the first step toward a better, more connected community. They had turned a moment of tension into a celebration of unity, and they were excited to continue their journey together, one step at a time.